The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Hey, if it's 9 at night, it's Citizen Mike. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. This is a Citizen Mike Show. My name is Mike Bradinsky. This is episode 4, November 9, 2017. On my right, the editor of the Record Journal, Ralph Tomaselli, and a special guest in the studio tonight, the top vote getter in the municipal elections that was held on Tuesday, Testa. Vin, thanks for coming on the Citizen Mike Show.
My pleasure.
Yeah, you know, when we scheduled your appearance, 2-3 weeks ago, I suspected you'd be up there, but top vote getter, I mean, what do you say about that? Your first question on the Citizen Mike Show. It's a deadly one. It's a lethal one.
I know. What do I say? It's humbling. It's flattering. It's gratifying. You know, it feels really good. I was actually talking to Kim the other night. You know, I was nervous, and I said, "You always get nervous because you're putting yourself out there, and we're putting ourselves out there and being judged by our community members, and when the returns are that favorable, it's very gratifying. It makes you feel very thankful and happy." Yeah,
Ralph. Did you spend election night slaving over your desk?
I did. I did.
Were you able to follow the returns at all?
I was able to follow the returns from all 4 towns that were coming in, and there were some bright spots for Democrats in each town. A few more bright spots than I remember in past years.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you about, and you and Vinny, about that in a second, but I want to get some data
let's do some data.
And we got some slides to illustrate that. Bruce, that number 1 slide, what do we got on that number 1 slide? So let's take care of the Board of Education, because that was a great contest, the Board of Education. And we got the results up there. The Democrats, of course, in blue. Republicans are in red. I'm going to go to Vinny Testa with my question, but just first a general observation. It seems to me, and this is speculation, of course, that the education community and the town at large has kind of formed a consensus about their core leadership. I mean, look at the tight spread, the tight shot group between Mike Votto down to Kathy Costelli. Right. Of course, Patty Purcell ran away with it, and Tammy Raccio did a great job just getting in for the first time. But it just seems that everyone was clustered there towards the middle, which kind of indicates that things are going okay. They're happy with that leadership. Vinny, you were on the Board of Ed. When you see these results, what's your analysis of all that?
Well, what I noticed, and I was pleased to see, is there was an acknowledgement, I think, of true qualifications and experience level, especially with some of the new people. I think Patty made it clear she had a career as a teacher. A lot of people know her as a teacher, and then having worked in a lot of development capacities. So I think across the system, the teachers were very familiar and had favorable opinions of Patty. She did a great job presenting herself to the public overall. Those are fantastic numbers.
Yeah, they are. Ralph, the speculation is now with leadership or the chairperson of the Board of Ed change. I mean, you got to think that it will.
Right.
Obviously, everyone's thinking that, but no one wants to say until they count the votes. But I would expect Mike Votto to regain the chair of the Board of Education. But that wouldn't mean much, I don't think, of a change in policy or trajectory of the Board of Ed. Vinny, my assessment of that about right, or?
That appears to be
Common sense?
a reasonable thing to expect.
All right.
What we see is, you mentioned from Mike down to Kathy, as far as the numbers being so similar.
Yeah.
When I was on the board, and even to this day, the Board of Education has been very non-political, according to the more traditional sense.
Right.
And I believe people recognize that. They are watching how people are performing up there, and they can tell when people are committed to the kids and to the system, and they can work well together. And I think people are rewarded for their service. And those new people coming in, people have acknowledged that they came to the table with something.
Right.
And that was reassuring to see.
Congratulations to the winners on the Board of Ed. I want to get to the next slide because we want to get into the council race and the mayoral race. And Bruce, you got that? This is the Town Council 2017. The councilors that won and their vote totals.
That's a nice slide. I like that slide.
You like that slide?
I do.
And I organized it, of course, by the biggest vote getter down to the 9th position. By golly, Ralph, Testa is up there, top vote getter.
It certainly is.
Okay.
And you've got 2 Democrats in the top 3.
Yeah. Bruce, keep that slide up there just for a minute. Explain that. What's your assessment of how that happened? Because my wife has got a theory, and I want to hear yours first, then I'm going to pop it on you.
Okay. I wonder, when I look at these vote totals, and this is totally whether people voted for 6 Democratic candidates and potentially stopped.
So, my wife Annie, Bruce, you can take that down, and my wife Annie has a theory. It's only a theory, but she's an informed observer and an political expert in her own right, of course. And she thinks there may have been some Trump effect affecting voter turnout in the council race and in the mayoral race.
Right.
And we saw Virginia, we saw New Jersey, and maybe that's going on.
Well, she and I are on the same page, because I think the reason people might have voted 6 Democrats and stopped was general unhappiness with the Republican Party. So
could be. So we have another slide, I think it's number 3 at this point, Bruce. Let's spend a little time on that one. What this slide attempts to show is the relative change in, I'm going to call it popularity or voting strength, between 2015 and 2017. And I started with 2015. So, for example, Tom Laughlin was first on my chart in 2015, and I just made another column, of course, for 2017. But in 2015, he got 54% of the vote. Very strong showing for Tom Laughlin in 2017, but this time he got less than half. He's down to 48, 0.4837, and so on down the chart. And where the number in 2017 is in red, that means a weakening of position or a slippage in vote percentage, and the blue means an increase in strength. So, Craig Fishbein did quite well, but the Democrats did well too. Vinny Testa, your thoughts? I mean, you're on the council all the time, and is there any rational explanation as to why the jostling, the changing of relative strength of these candidates? You improved, obviously, from 52.46 to 56. I mean, that's a great surge. Yeah, how come?
My initial tendency is to point to the desire on the part of the public to have a balanced government. But as I proceed with this theory, you have to still acknowledge the fact that it's still a 6-3 majority Republicans. So it may not carry over so far that newer candidates were still able to get over the hump and unseat incumbents, because we know that that's very difficult. However, if we look at those of us whose positions have improved, we're either the loyal opposition, Democrats, or Republicans who have shown a tendency to challenge the mayor. And I especially noticed Chris Shortell. I don't believe that's the only reason Chris has such a good showing. I think Chris, in one term, has just demonstrated himself to be a very thoughtful, reasonable, even-handed, likable counselor. And he's done a great job. But at the same time, he has shown a certain degree of independence to challenge the administration when he feels it's appropriate. And I believe that's been rewarded. But I've always said, I think the public wants to see representatives that are reasonable, that look like they do their homework, and that's what you tend to see rewarded. But I think that idea of having people up there that are not going to just rubber stamp, as the saying goes, the administration on everything, played a role in this election.
Ralph, before I get to you, I just want to point out that Gina Morgenstein's name was not up there because she wasn't on the council in 2015. So this was a chart on change of relative strength.
Right.
But she did a good job of getting herself working hard and getting on the council this time. But that's why her name wasn't on the list. But your thoughts?
Well, can we get the slide back up there, Bruce?
Yeah, we can do that.
Please. Yeah, and I agree with Vinny that the Blues are all people who have shown independence, regardless of party. Although I will say that Joe Marone and John Letourneau have shown some independence, perhaps not as much as the four in blue. The other thing I'd say is those who have been more in line with the mayor, Tom Laffin, Vinnie Cervoni, John Sullivan jump out. They're all in red. So just to continue with that point, and just to continue with it, because I of course, Vinny is very proud of his vote getting, but I'll point out that the theme of the Record Journal endorsements for counselors was that factor of independence. And we didn't weigh in on every counselor, but we gave a nod to Craig Fishbein, Vinny Testa, Jason Zandri, and Chris Shortell. And we did not give a nod to Tom Laffin, Vin Cervoni, or John Sullivan based on those criteria.
Bruce, let's take that down. So, Vinny Testa, this was a good night. If this was a good night for the Democrats, it was a good night for the Democrats because.
Well, it was a good night for the Democrats because of the success we had on the Board of Education. It was a disappointing night for us to a certain extent because we, had good candidates that weren't able to get a seat. But at the same time, we see Gina making a very strong showing, and that's positive. We gained a seat. Theoretically, we gained a seat that way.
Yeah. Oh, you did. I think you did. Yeah.
And that was a major. Yeah. Major plus for us. That was a testament to the work Gina's done for 4 years.
Yeah.
She ran twice, and in between elections, she's been tireless. And that was rewarded. Again, it's all about making yourself known, a known entity, and then after being a known entity, being a desirable entity, naturally. You don't want to be a known entity that people don't want. And she did the work to be rewarded with that. Ralph?
Well, I think it was also a big night for not a big night for the Democrats, but it could have been a much worse night for the Democrats if you had a candidate who left the party, ran unaffiliated, went to the GOP town committee, and won a seat. That would have really, and that's not a knock on John Sullivan. I would say that about if Vinny did that. I'd say that if to have a candidate leave the party, leave unhappy, have things to say about the party, go unaffiliated, go to the GOP town committee and win would have been a disaster for the local Democratic town committee, I would argue.
Yeah. Bruce, is there one more JPEG or maybe two? But let's get the next JPEG up there and see what we got. So just playing around with numbers here to see where they lead, if any place.
I'm glad you put this one up because I did not mention When we were talking about good, bad for the Democrats, I did not get a chance yet to discuss Jared's turnout.
So let's do that as we go over. Let me just walk our viewers through what the slide is supposed to show. I went back to 2013 because that's the last time there was a Democratic nominee for mayor. And of course, you know, the last cycle, 2015, there was an unaffiliated Don Kennedy running. So I wanted to go back to the last time there was a Democrat running for mayor. And I just pulled some numbers off the data that I got from Town Hall. You can see the voter turnout in 2017, total overall voter turnout was down a little bit. Whether that's significant or not, I'm going to ask you guys in a minute. You can see the mayor's percentage slipping from, you know, over 63 to, you know, 56% and change. And then the candidate share, the Democratic candidate share, going up a little bit up for Jared Lew. So, Vinny, you're our pundit for the night. How do you? Is there anything to take away from the slide, or is it just sort of interesting? But let's move on. What's your thought?
Well, there's certainly something to take away.
Tell us.
And that is less and less support for the mayor, more support for an alternative. I think when you look at this, I was trying to play with math in my head.
Yeah.
Roughly 3% voter turnout. What's that, 900 people? Round numbers, 30,000 voters. I'm really roughing it out. But at the same time, if only 40% voted, 40% of 30,000.
Well, about 25,000 registered voters.
Actually.
Yeah, about 25,000 registered voters.
So the 64% to 56%, that's of the people who voted. It's not of registered voters. So there was a lower turnout, but Jared got a bigger percentage of the vote than that might indicate. But I think what you see here, and Jason made a good point, there were less voters this time around. So one could argue that if the Republicans or unaffiliated voters that were supporters for Mayor Dickinson felt more threatened, perhaps more of them would have come out and voted. That was his argument about the turnout. That if more people did vote, that wouldn't necessarily mean they would have been Democratic voters.
Right.
But I don't know about that particular analysis. But I think overall, keeping it simple, Jared made a fantastic showing.
Ralph?
Well, in terms of the overall number being down, in terms of voter turnout, unscientifically, I would have to say that I got the feeling from talking to people that there was a lot of burnout from the 2016 presidential election in terms of elections in general. In fact, people feeling as though the 2016 election isn't over, that it's just, and that's too bad, because if burnout at the national level kept people away from the polls locally, I mean, that's just backwards. I mean, you need to vote locally, and that's where things. So I think that, and then I just real quickly, and then I maybe respond to both of them. I think Jared Lew, considering he spent $5,000, I continue to be impressed that, well, no, that he won that much vote spending almost no money. I'm surprised.
I'm not sure I'm with your point, your last point. What's the point of your last point? Is the lesson cost efficiency?
Well,
so lose the election but don't spend as much money? Or
no, here's what I would say.
What's the takeaway from that?
That Jared Lew, I don't know exactly what he did to get to 40%. I don't know that much about the inner workings of his campaign. He says he went door to door. I don't know. A lot of people go door to door. What he didn't do was he didn't buy traditional advertising. He didn't hold press conferences. He didn't make statements. He certainly didn't seek out traditional media. He may have used other media that I'm not aware of, but he didn't run a very traditional campaign in terms of not just money, but tactics. Does that clarify it a little better?
Well, okay. I think the theory was, and this is speculation on my part. Then I'll go to Vinny on this. I think his theory was keep turnout low. Don't increase turnout. don't increase it by generating excitement and getting a lot of people to the polls. He wanted to keep overall turnout low, my speculation, and to some degree she succeeded by bringing it down to 41%, although it was up from the Don Kennedy years. So if you keep it low overall, the thinking is that if he or his campaign can somehow target voters that will vote just for him with a lower overall turnout, but a higher turnout for Lou supporters, he might creep closer. So I think all appearances, I mean, I'm going by objective evidence. He certainly didn't want to bring general attention to his campaign, stimulating a lot of debate, and excitement. It was sort of a behind-the-scenes campaign, and to some degree, he did keep the turnout down, and he did get his percentage of his share up. Vinny, your reaction to my thoughts on that?
I'm not sure I agree with it.
Tell me.
I'm not sure I have a reasonable, easily articulated argument against it.
All right.
My impression was that he was targeting the voters that could go his way. They were being very strategic about it, as you should be.
I think we're on common ground there.
We probably are.
Yeah.
You're catching me a little off guard with the idea that he may have had the objective of, I don't want to increase voter, I don't want to, perhaps he didn't want to draw to the polls those people I was talking about earlier that would only show up if they felt they had to. That's an interesting look. I don't want to speak to what his strategy may or may not have been.
No, but you run a mayoral campaign and you see what happened and what didn't happen, and obviously you invite questions as to what's going on.
I was impressed with the organization he put together right from the beginning.
Right.
He had a strategy. You need to do this.
Yeah.
He had a strategy. He had a very modern campaign.
Very techy.
Type approach to this.
Right. Okay. Ralph?
So I think, again, so I can't say what I thought his strategy was because I don't know.
Okay. But so I'm just curious, how did you both brought up that he strategically targeted voters. So with $5,000 and no media events, how did he strategically target voters?
Well, reaching out personally, phone calls, targeted mailings.
You can't do a lot of mailings for less than $5,000, can you?
Well, if you're not sending them to 10,000 people, you can.
Okay.
And the debate goes on. Bruce, do we have one more JPEG left? My list got a little sloppy. Let's put that up and see what we got. Oh.
Wow.
Ralph. Have you ever seen anything like that before?
Well, my memory is not good, but it's certainly.
But don't admit that on the Citizen Mike show.
Well, I'm just saying, it's not like I poured over 2015, 2013
so serious.
things. Right, I know. Okay, you're right. I'm out of sync. So regardless of whether I did my homework or not, that's. No wonder Vinny's sitting here, having a pretty good night.
I think that's very unusual. I think Mayor Dickinson usually runs away from the rest of the pack. He's ahead of the ticket on the Republican side.
Yes, I agree.
He stomps all over whatever Democrat on the council. Good. So I think this is a significant slide. Bruce, let's take that down. Which leads me to the inevitable question, and we're going to see how Vinny Testa pivots away from this, because you and I are now experts on pivoting. We've had long discussions.
I pivoted. I pivot a little myself.
So is it inevitable that he's going to be called upon to run for mayor? Is Vinny Testa, is that sort of the up and out thing that we joked about off camera? By being the top vote getter, has he willfully put himself in a position of exposure to that kind of discussion and speculation? By getting those kinds of flashy numbers, as he put himself in the position to be leading the loyal opposition with, being more, I don't want to say more vocal, but being, on the council and sort of leading whatever charge may be appropriate. Vinny, I've listed about 3 or 4 things. Your thoughts on it?
He's here while you're talking.
I know, but I needed to set the table. Go ahead.
Asking all these questions about him. Well, first of all, you know as well as I having run
I'm not a
for
witness
mayor,
against myself. Yeah, go ahead.
that it's not wise to equate your vote tally as a council candidate to what you can expect to receive as a mayoral candidate. We both have been there, and we both saw our numbers drop. We received very good votes, numbers of votes as council candidates, and then we ran for mayor, and the numbers didn't come in the same way. So I would not look at that slide and say, wow, look at me. I almost got as many votes as the mayor. I could probably beat him. If I had run for mayor, I would have won. No, that's not how it works. I take it to mean that the voters have reaffirmed that they like me on the council. I can't assume that that means they would want me as the mayor. I'm not saying I wouldn't, that they might not. I'm just saying I don't draw that conclusion, and I don't think it's safe to do that. Having said that, I would be disingenuous if I didn't say I acknowledge that it puts me in a position to be a reasonably strong contender if I were to choose to run for mayor again. I would have a claim to it. In other words, I would have to say I should be considered a legitimate candidate because of my standing as a councilor and the votes I've received, because the public knows who I am. I'm an entity. I believe I would have a good standing to potentially be a candidate if I wanted to, but I don't think it means, oh, look at that.
And your approach on the council now, are you the go-to guy for the Democrats?
I believe it's honestly, it's all three of us are going to be in that position.
Okay.
Certainly I have, based on experience and again the votes, I'm sure there's a certain degree of seniority and that comes along with that.
The elder statesman's card is playing.
Correct. However, Jason and I have both been there a while.
Yeah.
Our numbers are very similar. We both have pretty much behave the same way up there as far as the things we put forward, the support we offer one another on our motions and on our efforts. We can expect Gina to be there with us. I believe I wouldn't expect to see one person being the go-to battler of the mayor. You're going to see a very strong trio drawing in some of the others on those issues that matter.
Well, I think Vinny's point about not allowing his vote total as a councilor to necessarily translate to the mayoral race against Mayor Dickinson is a good one, and I think in sports the way we put it is that your opponent has something to say about it.
Well, we just put the slide up to stir the pot.
Right.
To get this thread going.
No, but I think one thing that I would say is this, that I also think another reason why, if I was Jason Zandri or Vin Testa, I can't say now if I'm going to run 2 years from now because, if you run against Mayor Dickinson, you lose your council seat. And I don't know if that's good for the party. And just one last observation, though, that doesn't really have to do with Jason and Vinny, but has to do more with the people that didn't do as well in this election and the mayoral race, which is if you're thinking your path to the mayor's seat when Mayor Dickinson decides to step aside is being close as you can be to Mayor Dickinson, I might rethink that after this election. I'm not sure that after 38 years that they want Dickinson Jr. when Dickinson leaves. I think that the town is more apt to turn to somebody who's farther away from the mayor, and that could be Vinny, it could be Jason Zandri, it could be an independent candidate like an independent Republican like Craig Fishbein, it could be an outsider completely. But if you're going to hitch your wagon to the mayor closely and think that's the avenue, I'm not sure that's the way to go.
Vinny, why did John Sullivan do so badly?
I think leaving the Democratic Party pretty much guaranteed little to no Democratic vote, for starters. So he lost a lot of votes that way. I wasn't sure that was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen. John's a friend of mine. I liked him as a counselor. I like the fact that we gained a seat, but I wanted us to gain seats, and I didn't necessarily want to see John lose a seat. I like having John up there. He's a good counselor, and he's a friend of mine. So I'm disappointed on his behalf and for him. I think he lost a lot of support by being unaffiliated. I don't think there was enough of the Republican support to carry him over. And somehow or another, I think it's clear that the average unaffiliated voter, for some reason, didn't take to the strategy he chose.
Yeah, the third line.
I think that hurt too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people commented online that they thought that hurt them, and they wondered why it was like that. That's just the way ballots are made. I believe a lot of people that vote in Wallingford do not really pay attention to the politics of it. And it's a good possibility is if they went across, they used up their votes and passed him by.
Yeah.
Where he was on the ballot. It's a combination of many things. I think it caught everybody by surprise. I don't think anybody can say that they saw that coming.
Right.
I truly did not see it coming. So I wouldn't. Okay. I only could take a guess. I think traditional politics played a major role in it.
Ralph?
Well, I think you can be an unaffiliated candidate with party endorsement and win. And we have a mayor in Meriden who is an unaffiliated candidate with Democratic endorsement. We've also got some other councilors in Meriden who are minor party with Republican endorsement. But to be unaffiliated without a party endorsement, we had John in Wallingford, and then we had a candidate in Southington who spent tens of thousands of dollars to win a council seat unaffiliated and lost. So you need a party endorsement. So that's why I was kind of waiting for John to either mend fences, not knowing the specifics of the situation, but waiting for John to either mend fences with the Democrats or seek an endorsement from the Republicans. I think you had to do one of those. I don't think you could do neither and expect to go it complete. I don't care whether you're John Sullivan or Vin Testa or Mike Bradinsky or Ralph Tomaselli. I think that's a really hard road to go.
So I'm going to give you my takeaway, and then I want to go to another topic. On this election, I think there's enough objective evidence out there that the Democratic Party is on the ascendancy, with Vinny Testa and Jason Zandri taking the top two out of three spots, and Craig Fishbein, who is not the traditional Republican, and sometimes he can be more of a Democrat.
Right.
So I say there's 3 out of 3 in the top 3 spots that are non-Republicans.
Yeah, good point.
And with Gina Morgenstein, getting a shot now on the town council as a Democrat, I say that's how it looks on the council side. Clearly on the Board of Ed, the results speak for themselves. The Democrats have a majority in the Board of Ed. I think that's a good sign. And I think there's some overflow energy going maybe from the Board of Ed to the council next time, because you got some really hard workers there by Democrats on the Board of Ed. On the mayoral race, something happened, and Mayor Dickinson's popularity slipped in the face of sort of a light touch campaign by Jared Lew. And despite that light touch, the mayor's numbers weren't as strong. I would not recommend anyone else the same kind of campaign in the future, but nevertheless, I think a vulnerability, has been exposed, and the Republicans listening to these remarks say, I'm full of poppycock, but that's what makes the Citizen Mike show.
I need to jump in.
Yes, please.
First of all, it's and I don't know this.
Yeah.
I have not spoken to Jared at all about his plans. But it could very well be that he has approached this as a 2-election run for the mayor. Again, as well as I, even when we ran, it would have been nice if we could have gone one after another to try to build momentum. Things didn't work out that way for whatever reason. So that could be an approach he's taking. He'd be a very strong candidate again in 2 years. He has a good message. He's a smart guy. He could continue to build and work for the next 2 years. So he may have started something that he fully intended would require him 2 elections to be successful.
Good point.
The other point I need to jump in on, because I can't let you get away with this. You said once in a while
Yes.
Craig even is a Democrat. Craig is never a Democrat.
What I meant was he votes many times with the loyal opposition.
Or he behaves, and I don't even want to say as a non-Republican, because you know as well as I, his politics are as conservative Republican as they come. He many times will be anti-Republican, local Republican. In other words, he'll fight the mayor.
Yeah.
He'll be the maverick or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean he's being a Democrat.
Right.
His policies are never even close to a Democrat.
All I meant was he's often the thorn in their side.
That's okay.
And,
I understand you can say that.
Yeah, that's
he's the
all.
opposition. But I would never want anyone to think that, that there's times when he espouses democratic policy or values.
No.
You know me, I'm a diehard.
Anyone who watches the show,
Democrat.
anyone who watches the show more than 5 minutes knows that's not true. But go ahead, Ron.
Well, I just wanted to throw out some other things on this theme of.
With all due respect to Craig,
of course.
I think the words you used were Democratic ascendancy.
Yeah.
Or a good night for the Democrats. And I just want to point out a couple things, a couple trends in towns next door. It was a good night for Meriden Democrats, and it came at the expense of two Republicans who were very far to the right, had had some success in the past, and were not bashful about showing their support for President Trump. So I just wanted to point that out. And in Meriden, Donald Trump was the best thing that ever happened for Meriden Democrats. And it's a different town and a different dynamic, but they had suffered some defeats in recent elections, and they really rebounded stronger than ever. And then in Southington, Southington Democrats took the majority on the council for the first time in 8 years. I don't know if that was linked to national politics. That may have been more of infighting within the local GOP. But just, like I said, it was a good night for Democrats all around in our towns.
Bruce, if you could begin to tee up Testa Clip 1, which has to do with a question and answer at the forum, at the recent candidate forum. It had to do with budgeting. Vinny Testa answered the question, and because budgets are going to be coming up pretty soon, it's going to, and the official result of the audit is coming out at the end of December. When we play this this clip, I want to ask Vinny Testa about his approach on the council as a top vote getter when the budget comes up. So let's play that, Bruce. 3, 2, 1, hit it.
An answer you gave earlier, I think you mentioned that you think the town adds to the surplus some years because of budgeting disagreements you have with the administration. And I just wanted to get you to talk about, how you think the town could better budget its each year to not add to the surplus and to more accurately predict revenues and expenses.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm going to dial a friend. Well, what happens is we don't work with any of the individual departments on creating their budgets. We question them when it's budget time, but the preparation of the budget is an administrative function, and that's the direction of the mayor and the department heads, and they're okay. You're going to be preparing your budget. What we see, we start questioning that. It's very difficult to start saying, well, do you really need a copier? Do you really need this? Do you really need that? And that's micromanaging where we don't have the ability to do that. But in the big picture, what we historically do is overestimate our expenses and underestimate our revenues. And every time we turn around, there's $2, $3 million on this side and a couple of $1 million on this side. We apply $3, $4 million from the reserves to the budget, but they're never really used. And at the end of the year, lo and behold, there's the surplus that gets put back into the budget with a little bit extra, and that's why we continue to build up that reserve fund. But that's excess taxation. The taxpayers are paying that. So basically, what we're doing is we're building up our rainy day fund by overtaxing. And the only way you can fight that is to be stricter in the preparation of each department's budget. And if that necessitates an across the board, okay, this year, knock off 3%, this year knock off 5%. Find out how to do it. Leave it to the professionals in each department to determine where it's going to come from. Let them decide whether they need those items. But we need to put more strict guidelines in the budgeting process, and that's an administrative.
That's an administrative function. Was the Ralph?
Well, I think I agree with Vinny, and I think I might take it a step further, which is that you can't. The mayor is the one who works with each department on the specifics of a budget. But what the council does is free to question the mayor about how he prepares a budget. And if he prepares the budget this coming year the way he's prepared it in the past, overestimating expenses, underestimating revenue, not using actuals to estimate spending, but just adding a percentage to the budgeted amount from last year, I wonder if Vinny would consider, an across-the-board cut of 2%, knowing that you're going to end up with 2% left over in the end.
Vinny?
I don't know if we can even do that, because by the time we get it, we have to make line item cuts. We have to determine where those cuts go. What I was explaining, and as I was answering that question, I heard it, I realized at one point I said we. I switched over to we. I did not mean we as the council. When I said we, I started talking about we as a town. We overestimate expenses, we underestimate revenues. That's the administration. What I was trying to get across was this has to be done at the administrative level, and that's what's so frustrating for me as a counselor. Where can I impact the budget? And I mentioned to you earlier offline, half jokingly, that I'm a energy conserving pragmatist. In other words, I've been around for a few years, and I don't want to spin my wheels on things that aren't going to get us anywhere. That doesn't mean I'm not going to fight on principle for things, even though I don't know we will be successful. But some things you don't waste your time on. So I try to think, where can we make a real difference in the budget? And I believe what we're going to see is, what I'm going to be looking at would be ways to change, we've talked about this in the past, change the way we handle capital expenditures, one-time expenditures.
I don't want to digress into that. That's okay. Probably another show.
That's fine.
Yeah. But I get the point.
I think I was just trying to explain how we get to where we are and how difficult it is for the council to have an impact on that, especially when the majority of the council is going to support the mayor regardless of what he does.
So then you can't make a motion then to decrease the total amount of the mayor's budget by some percentage that you come up with?
Well, we can. We can. And we can, I suppose, do that and say, okay, take every line item and drop it by 2%. We could tell the controller to do that. Go across the board, just take 2% off everything. But you're going to find yourself in areas where you can't do that. The big ticket items. You can't do that on salary, insurance, the things that cost you the most money. That's what I meant. It starts, and what will happen,
right. No, I'm glad
you will be spinning your wheels. Okay. It won't work. Okay. I don't think it will work. If you show me a way to do it,
no,
it might be a good idea. What I'm thinking about is we have operational expenses and we have capital expenses. We have to find a way to work on the capital expenses. We have to accept, unless we want to cut people, we have to accept what the cost of salaries and insurance are going to be.
Right. Well, then maybe couldn't you do it this way? Couldn't you cut everything but salary? Could you cut every account but salaries by 2%? It's a question.
I suppose you could potentially try to do that.
Maybe it's not practical.
I'm afraid it would potentially seem irresponsible in practice.
Yeah.
That's why I'd rather find a different way to do it.
What I'm hearing is that there's not much you can do. Not much is going to be done.
Oh, you didn't hear that?
Well, then
You said not
correct
much
me.
is going to be done. You said that's for another show.
Well,
there is going to be a
hold
lot
on.
done.
On capital expenditures, that's another hour show.
Right.
So when we get the budget, we can talk about capital expenditures, but
Right.
that's not the solution. That's not what I'm getting at.
Yes.
If your answer is, all we got to do is change the way that we do capital expenditures, and we're there. If that's the answer, we can, we'll go on. I don't think that's what you're saying, though. What I heard you say is an administrative function. Your hands are pretty much tied. When it can be fixed at the mayor's level, but not so at the council level. I mean, you're asked that at the forum, and we ask it again here. But that's kind of what I heard. It's an administrative function to do that. You're not going to be cutting 2%. So when I look forward to the budget season, I see history repeating itself. I don't see any change.
When you put it like that.
Yeah, I guess. There's
Gee,
a lot of better ways I could have put
No,
it.
when you put it like that, it sounds. I don't like.
Where did I go wrong?
It sounds either.
Well, we just ask questions.
I'm not
Yeah.
abrogating responsibility here, saying my hands are tied. I can't do anything about it.
Right.
I suppose.
So we were trying to probe. So what can you do
what I
about
was
it?
trying
And
to
we didn't.
express was the frustration of trying to make it happen in practice.
Well, you can because I think I got
Perhaps when I say we
I'm sorry.
can't, when I say we can't, perhaps I'm saying we, the opposition, can't, the minority can't, because it's not going to happen. That's really what I'm getting at. There I am humming again.
Well, maybe I was the one who got us started on this across the
Yes,
board
and
concept.
thank you for that.
Okay, right.
And thank you for that.
So then, but just so that there's hope here, you could make targeted cuts in the mayor's budget, not being expert on it. Like, for example, couldn't you make a motion to decrease the amount of money that's contributed to the pension fund?
Sure.
Okay. And that's just one. I'm not as expert on the budget.
I tried that one year.
Yeah.
Right.
So that could be done for all these things.
Right.
And 6 hours later,
Right.
You're going to first have no idea what the consequences of your motion are.
Okay.
You're going to be met with a barrage of staff objections.
Oh, God.
And this happened to me with Dortenzio.
Right.
When I was pointing out the excess money left over in the police budget. Do you want to wait another 3 minutes while a squad car gets to your house while your wife and child are being assaulted?
Well,
I heard that.
No,
I heard
Mike,
that.
and that's an excellent point, but maybe...
So, and the three biggest budgets are pension,
Right.
Police, fire, Public Works. I've also heard from the mayor. So when your roads aren't plowed right away, and you cut the budget, and so on and so forth, that's the threat you get. There was one year I was on the council, and we actually did pass a $600,000 cut, and the mayor was in the headline. You're going to regret this because your roads are not going to be plowed.
Yeah.
So
It's an uphill battle.
that's why I said, and history will repeat itself, and both of you jump down my throat, which I invite because,
No, I'm not jumping down your throat. But
Whenever I talk about the reserve fund,
Yeah.
whenever I talk about bonding, whenever I talk about other ways of doing capital expenses, whenever I talk about alternatives to the way we fund the pension, whenever I bring any of this up, I am met with,
those kinds of things.
do we want to be California or Detroit?
Yeah. So the false choice.
So here's one thing, though, that I
Yes.
think plays towards, real quickly, that might help, to find some ray of sunshine in this. You did elect a third Democrat to the council.
Right.
So at least Vinny is working with two others. We talked about Craig Fishbein, who is sometimes seems to be a party onto his own, and there's four. Joe Marone and Chris Shortell have shown some... isn't there more of a chance with this council to put together some kind of coalition to do something?
Oh, certainly.
Okay.
I would think any reasonable effort to reduce an expenditure and lower the tax burden would be acceptable to Craig. It'd be a big argument. We'd have to find another person, at least a fifth person, to make that happen. But as you showed in a clip, another clip you sent to me, if all of those efforts, there were multiple efforts to do that, but if all of those ended up with a budget that still contained a tax increase of any sort, one could reasonably expect that Craig would vote against it. Anyway.
No.
So, talk about spinning your wheels.
Right.
So there again lies an obstacle to trying to get changes made that still might still get through a mayoral veto.
Vinny, one of the issues that came up, and we're running out of time, so we're going to have to try to be concise on both ends of this. One of the issues that came up in the campaign was the amount of the fund balance, sometimes called the surplus. Mm-hmm. You were asked a question about it. You gave an answer that you thought 5 to 10% of the budget would be okay for credit rating purposes. The total fund balance now is $29 million. I'm rounding it down. It's $29 million. The amount set aside for the credit rating, I'm rounding up to $16 million. So the amount that the town sets aside, that's a judgment call. That's not a requirement. But Jim Bowes and the mayor have said, have decreed by operation of a pen and a paper, $16 million may be set aside for the credit rating. Fund balance is $29 million. What should the fund balance be? What should it be? If not $29 million...
So 16 is what percent of our overall budget?
It's about 10%.
It's about 10.
Yep.
So if it was 10...
Well, that'd be the total fund balance. It'd be 16 million.
No, I'm saying if the amount set aside...
Give you that.
...was 10 million, which is fully within the criteria that the agencies are happy with. It could be less. That would be what, 7%? I'm
close.
Roughing it.
But let's...
So that's $5 more million. That is excess surplus.
So you take if you had the votes, you would take the surplus down, the fund balance down from 29 million to...
I'm not saying I would do that at one time.
No, gradually.
I'm saying the rules that we've established, what we need to have, can be changed. So that as we are faced with upcoming expenses, such as community pools, such as other things, the capital expenses, those types of things, as we put together a long-term capital plan, we can utilize some of our reserves if we've set different criteria for what is acceptable. Anytime anyone mentions this, the go-to argument is, he wants to spend our rainy day fund and break us. Tax and spend liberal, Democrat, blah, blah, blah. When if the mayor and Jim Bowes set, which is going to happen because we're facing difficulties, they're going to use, at some point, suggest what I'm saying. But when they say it, it's going to be responsible.
Sure, I know.
It's going to be conservative.
That's politics.
Right. We are, it is safe to say we have too much we have more money than we need to have in reserves in order to maintain our credit rating, our security, all of the things that we enjoy. I'm not saying spend it, but there is money in there that we could potentially devote to other uses.
Ralph?
Well,
not operational expenses.
You know, I happened to look at numbers recently, bonded indebtedness of the towns that we cover, and Wallingford's is minuscule.
Well, that keeps dropping.
Okay, and so I guess someone said to me, well, aren't you lucky? Well, except that I've got $16 million sitting in an account for a credit rating that's just not being used, and I'm not sure that I feel lucky about that.
Well, we do use it. We do bond. We just don't bond to any degree where we could.
But like I said, and maybe it's something that we can talk about on another show, but if you're putting money aside for a credit rating that you're not using, again, I don't know how happy I should be about that.
Well, maybe not happy, but it's a necessary evil. Let me try to button this up because we're gonna run out of time. So it's understood that that government should put aside. Let's talk municipalities.
Right.
Should put aside something that will not be touched and will not be dipped into and will not be drawn down. Just to appease the credit rating agencies, and that amount is subject to debate. I think we agree on that. So if a AAA credit rating is worth something, and the benefits come back in the way of theoretically lower interest costs, but that has never been quantified, it's never been measured, it's never been laid out sort of in spreadsheet form. But if that's the benefit, and as a matter of civic pride, you want to hold on to the AAA credit rating, and two-thirds of Wallingford have said again and again and again that's sort of important to them. That's the mayoral election result. So that $16 million set aside for the bonding for the credit rating is locked up, and you're not going to feel happy about it, but it's a cost of doing business in a town. That's it. Everything else, with the exception of about $4 million, could be considered in play if there's a strategy to reach it. Vinny, we're going to give you the last word. We got about 30 seconds, and then we're going to have to sign off. But your reflections on anything we've talked about, or anything at all. Give you the final word.
Well, you say there's about 16 assigned for credit rating, and then there's another 7 we call spare change.
Spare change.
We have $22 million that is set aside for security. Call it what you wish. 10 million could be the number that maintains our credit rating to everybody's satisfaction. That leaves $12 million more. Now, I'm not saying let's spend it next week. I'm saying as we prepare budgets, as we look at long-term capital expenses, as we look at projects, as we look at the crumbling infrastructure in Wallingford that needs to be fixed, we may have to say we need to take a few million and do that because that's an investment in the community. And then we need to look at our ongoing capital expenses and take advantage of that bond rating and do some more creative financing. That's what I would say. And the other thing I would say is a lot of the things I said are an administrative function. Most of the things I want to do, I could do a lot easier if I was in the mayor's seat, but I'm not saying that's where I'm headed.
Ooh, let's make that the final word.
I just wanted to tease you with that one.
Let's make that the final word, and we'll excise this clip, and we'll re-loop it on many shows. Thanks for coming on the Citizen Mike Show.
I just wanted to tease you a little bit there.
I tease you guys, so it's enjoyable. It's fun. Thanks to the viewers for tuning in. Again, congratulations for being the top vote getter. We're here on Wednesdays, but WPA has the shows 9 o'clock on Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And after a couple days, it's up on YouTube, so check it out on YouTube. It's the Citizen Mike Wallingford channel, and see the Citizen Mike Show. Remember, if it's 9 at night, it's Citizen Mike. Good night, everybody.